Doing well tonight. If you haven't had a chance already, take a look at the chat. There's a question there for everyone to respond to in the chat. There's also a link in the chat to an updated notes-taking document. You have one in each of your shells, but I made a few corrections to that one, so there's a link in the chat. If you don't see either of those, let us know and we'll repost those for you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started while you're typing in the chat. I do want to ask Dr. Cockrell to introduce herself, and then I'll follow Dr. Cockrell, and then we'll talk about your responses in the chat. So welcome, Dr. Cockrell. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Nicole Cockrell. I am currently a principal in Madison County Schools at Mansdale Upper Elementary, which is a 3-5 school. This is going into my second year serving as the lead principal. Prior to that, I was the assistant principal at Mansdale Upper for the past 6 years. And before that, I was the literacy specialist for Mansdale 3 years before that. I've worked in the Mississippi Delta. I'm originally from Greenwood, and so my teaching career started there. And then we moved to this area, and I worked in Jackson Public Schools at Poindexter, which is no longer a school anymore, before coming into Madison because I wanted to be closer to my babies as they were entering middle and high school and sports and different things. I love all things education, and I'm super excited for this class. And I love reading your comments about data.
Thank you, Dr. Cockrell. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. If you've not had me in a class up until this point, maybe it's our first time getting to know each other. I'm Dr. Paula Tharp. I coordinate the licensure program for school administration in the Educational Leadership Division of the Teacher Education and Leadership Department at Mississippi State. My background goes way back. I started as a kindergarten teacher more years ago than I want to say. I've taught a lot of different grade levels, a little smattering here and there across elementary, middle, and high school. And I've been an elementary principal for a total of about 9 years. When I left the principalship, in between principalship, I did a lot of work with a school improvement organization. So I got to work with schools across about 4 states who were wanting to improve, mostly high poverty rural schools who were wanting to improve. And I love doing that work, working alongside principals to help improve their schools. I've done a few other things here and there, but I think those are some of the most meaningful and beneficial roles that I've had. Love working with you guys in our school administration licensure program, and we're happy to have all of you in our, most of you are in our teacher leadership program working on those master's or specialist degrees. We've got a few school admin candidates joining us this term, and we are just excited about what we're going to learn in this semester. So I know it's most of your first summers with us. It's been fast and furious, and congratulations for finishing your June semester and that course, and I know one of your courses continues into July. So we're just excited to be here with you and looking forward to what you'll learn this term and then the impact that you're going to make in your schools. So we ask you to put a couple of words in the chat that describe two different things. One, how you're feeling this evening, and then two, a word that describes what you hope to gain out of this course. The 2-word check-in comes from Dr. Brene Brown, who is a lifelong educational leadership researcher. And the reason that we're focused tonight on a 2-word check-in is because that's a strategy that she teaches us in order to make sure that we're checking in with our people. So when you move into that leadership role, whether it's across a school or with a small group of teachers, those group of people that you're working with really become your class. And it's very important to make sure that you check on them, check on their wellness, check on how they're doing. And this is just one strategy to be able to do that. The trick is if someone gives you a hint that there's something going on that you need to follow up on, don't forget to do that. Circle back around to your people and check in on what you noticed and make sure that if there is something you can do to support them, that you make sure you do that. So several of you say you're excited, hungry, tired, determined. Some of you used a few more words than one to describe your hope of the class, but a lot of it centers around really understanding how to work with data and then how to support your schools in establishing a culture of data analysis in your buildings. So we are happy to read about all of that. I hope that your anxiousness is just because there's a little bit of unknown and you're excited about getting started. All right, there is a link also in the chat to a note-taking agenda. There was one in your courses, but I realized I posted that a little bit too quickly and posted the one that Dr. Cockrell and I use to keep us on track in the evening. So I adjusted that a little bit so that it is an appropriate note-taking document for you guys. You can use it either way, but I did correct my mistakes on that one. So open up that link, download that document, and you can take notes throughout our class tonight to keep with you. So a few of the topics that we're going to talk about tonight, of course, we want to welcome all of you, and we'll have a couple of different breakout sessions tonight for you to begin to work together and get to know each other through those breakout sessions. I know that's something you've already started in your other classes, and we'll continue to get to know each other that way. We're going to talk tonight about compliance versus commitment. To CSI stands for Continuous School Improvement, so we'll have an exercise with that. We're going to touch base on the Continuous School Improvement Cycle and the framework, and talk a little bit about multiple measures of data as we get you ready for your Sunday assignment that's due, and introduce you to a case study that we'll use throughout the course. So this course is all things data. You've got a couple of texts that we're going to be using this term. One is data analysis for continuous school improvement. That is one that you'll want to have in your professional library that you can use over and over once you get into your role. So it's a really helpful teaching text as well as a how-to text that'll give you a lot of good protocols and things to use with teacher teams and even with the entire school. And then the second one is the achievement teams model, which we're really excited about, and we'll touch on that through actually both of these throughout the program, but on the achievement teams we'll use it a little bit more in some of your subsequent courses as well. It gives you a protocol to use in your data team meetings with teachers. So we want to teach you that protocol. Well, we're excited about having you tonight. Looking forward to the fast and furious about 4.5 weeks that we have together. So I'll let Dr. Cockrell talk to you about our objectives for tonight's class meeting.
Okay, I had to mute myself for a little bit. My husband's working on all of his tools at this hour of the evening, and my office and the garage back up to each other. So I'm like, turn it off. Afternoon fun. That's what we do around here. But Dr. Tharp went over our topics for tonight. What I want to touch on more or less is lesson framing. I'm an elementary school principal, and we talk a lot about framing our lesson, and that's so that the learner knows exactly what the expectations are for the class. So our expectations tonight is to understand the foundational concepts of data for our CSI. Also, continue just the case study expectations, because that is the next large assignment you guys have due. But before we get into a lot of this, I like to review the roles when you're in your breakout sessions. You're going to be in groups of 5 or 6 because of the numbers on the call tonight. But we like for someone, once you get in that group, someone determine, okay, I want to be the recorder or the reporter. Someone who wants to be the timekeeper, because we will tell you the number of minutes you have in the breakout sessions. And so you'll need someone within your group that can say, okay, guys, we got 5 minutes. We still have 3 things left to do, you know. And then, I'm sorry, was that a question?
Oh, wow. Oh, you got to be so cute. You got to, yeah.
Okay, so I think someone's mic was on. A process observer, and that person is going to notice the following things: the stated and enacted task language, and just making sure we are on task. We don't, venture off into other topics and different things. Chart application, that's if you need to notate, do anything of that nature. You want to have somebody who is going through all the things with that. When team members challenge each other's thinking and offering different point of views, let's remember that this is graduate work, guys. We're not going to all meet and agree because we're in so many different settings. Backgrounds are totally different. Your walk to education, getting to the field of education, as well as where you are currently. Some people are lit specialists, some people are SPED teachers, some do athletics. And so making sure we take time to listen to different points of views, and not just thinking our side is the right side, because sometimes we learn more by listening than speaking. And then just remembering our norms for our breakout sessions, making sure we do our time management. We're going to do our best to keep you, to get you out of here on time. And I tell my teachers all the time, like, my biggest pet peeve is time. Can't get it back once it's gone. So we're not going to waste your time. And I'd appreciate when y'all are in your breakout sessions that's what you're spending time on, the discussions that are before you, and using the time that's given to learn and glean different ideas from each other. Okay? Participate when you're in your breakout sessions. All right. You ready, Dr. Tharp?
Speaking of breakout sessions, we're about to go into our first one. So we've divided you into 6 groups. There's one group that is not assigned to a breakout, and you'll be having your discussion on our main page so that we can capture your thoughts in a recording for any of our candidates who can't be with us tonight. So if you'll take a look at the instructions on your note-taking guide, we have a few questions that we want you to talk about. The primary one is, what is the difference between compliance and accountability for school improvement? You'll find the chart for determining or thinking about the difference between compliance and commitment on page 4 of Data Analysis for Continuous School Improvement. So go ahead and find page 4 in your text. In the hard copy, it's page 4. It may be slightly different if you have a digital copy, maybe page 3, but somewhere thereabout. So take a look at that chart. Take a minute on your own to review those sections on the table, and then think about the difference between compliance and accountability for improvement, or commitment to accountability for improvement. Our question is, which one is most important and why? And then each group should be prepared to report out on a response that you can agree on as we come back out of the breakout rooms. So you'll have probably about 10 minutes to talk about that question together, and then the reporter should be prepared to share your group's discussion when we come back. All right, any questions about the directions for the breakout room or anything that you need to be able to participate. Okay. All right, I'm going to click Start Breakout Rooms, and you should see a message pop up on your screen to join your group.
Okay, so I don't think we moved to a group, so we must be in the main one that's still recording.
It's a lot of pressure.
Right? I'm in a hotel room, and so if I lose you, I will come back. I will come right back.
All right. I guess we need to get our roles set up.
Okay?
So, I can be the recorder if that's okay, unless somebody else knows.
No, you go right ahead.
All right, I'll do recording.
I'll be the timekeeper.
I'm sorry, who's that?
Jessica, timekeeper.
Hey, I got you.
I'll do the process observer.
Whitney.
To get the,
I can't already hear. I'm sorry.
Yeah, your phone's breaking up a little bit. Or your computer, I'm sorry.
my computer. I know I don't have that document that they sent. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. The updated note taking, is that where the different roles are?
Yes. I shared it in the chat again.
Okay,
I put the link up in there again.
Can't get the chat to pop up.
thank you.
Push that little button, that little bubble at the top right hand corner.
It's not letting me pull it up for some reason.
Also, if you push those three little dots at the bottom of your screen
Yeah.
and go to chat with everyone, that's the chat box too.
Yeah, I know. Like I see the chat with everyone, but it's not showing me any history.
I'll post it. I'll post it again.
Post it now and see if it works. Sorry, we can move on. I don't want to waste everybody's time.
Okay, so here's my first question, and then I can move forward. Um, which book are we working out of? The Data for School Improvement? Is that the chapter? Yes. Okay. So the question was the difference between compliance and what was the other term? I'm sorry.
Commitment.
Compliance and commitment.
Yeah, so at the
Difference
top,
between compliance and
For accountability, and then school improvement.
Okay.
And then the B part was which one is most important and why. Christina, did you see the link I just
yes,
sent?
I got it. Thank
Okay,
you.
gotcha.
It pulled up
Anybody
for
else
me that
need it,
time.
or everybody else got it?
I think I So I will say that I think that the commitment for continuous school improvement is going to trump the other accountability every way. Like, this is one of the things that stuck out for me when I read this chapter earlier, is that sometimes you look for the gap and you try to notice the deficit and what you're going to do to fix the deficit, but you're not always looking at the whole bit of data. And so I know that I'm guilty of that. And so I loved this graph so much that I want to make copies of it and share it with all of my colleagues, because I think it's so eye-opening to see the difference between just recognizing the gap, but then for embracing the whole vision.
I agree with you, Christina. To piggyback off that, I believe that the difference is primarily based on what you're focused on, what's your purpose, and what are you looking to get out of it. I think that's
Yeah.
That's the main difference to me.
I think somewhere in here it said too that um, when they started talking about what the teachers are doing that are seeing those improvements, and focusing on what those methods to get that growth were.
Um, I agree with you guys, and I sometimes kind of overthink. I think it's a little bit of both. I think both are important when I think about a school setting. Compliance, it just feels very structured, like you're telling someone you have to do this, or I have to abide by something. But I think that we need that in certain areas because it's that accountability piece that these are things that are expected of us and they must be done in order for us to have certain things in place. And you have to have a commitment. Which you have to want to do it, but sometimes there are certain things that I need you to understand you have to do. So I mean, I know I'm just rambling, but when we talk about school improvement, I think it's a combination of both.
I agree as well, Whitney. But I believe that if it's gonna be between compliance for accountability versus the school improvement part, which one is more important? I would
Mhm.
say school improvement is, for the simple fact that we're trying to elevate our educational outcomes and just prepare our students for the future. So I think school improvement really does aim more towards those two things, the educational outcome and then preparing students for future challenges.
I think another big takeaway that I had is, again, just knowing what you're planning for, like knowing where you're going and where you're trying to get to is critical in being able to evaluate that data and being able to like take a look at to see, like you have to know what you're trying to reach or where you're trying to go get to.
All right, so we have to agree upon a wording. So how about this? Commitment is the cornerstone of our efforts, while compliance involves adhering to a structured guidelines and often feels directive. It is sometimes necessary to enforce certain actions. However, the primary focus should be on school improvement as it is essential for preparing individuals for the future. Does that sound good? Or what you?
Oh, that
I think
sounds exceptional.
I think it sounds amazing.
I got it. All right, well, that'll be what, it says we have to agree upon a phrasing for that. Be prepared to report out on agreed upon response. So I just kind of put y'all's together. Okay.
I have 7 minutes left on the clock because we started at about 5:16. Am I right, Dr. Tharp?
Yes, although we're running a little bit behind, and you guys seem like you're about ready. Is that right? So just trying to gauge the groups.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Did y'all answer the question which one's most important and why?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
good.
Christina, did you get that document, or I can email it to you?
I did. Yes, thank you.
All right.
Okay, there was some good discussion. I hope you all got to a point where you're ready to make a statement. Do we need to give the reporter just a couple of minutes to get your thoughts together? Okay, well, we'll go ahead then. So as a group, you are going to report out on an agreed upon response to our question. And our question was, what is the difference and which one is most important? Compliance versus commitment to continuous school improvement. So compliance for accountability versus commitment to using data for continuous school improvement. All right, so let's begin. I know the group out front was ready. I spent a little bit of time with them. So who's the reporter for the team that was out front?
Oh, Lyndon Ratliff.
Okay.
All right, so we came up with, this is our comment that we made. Commitment is the cornerstone of our efforts and therefore more important. While compliance involves adhering to structured guidelines and often feels directive, it is sometimes necessary to enforce certain actions. However, the primary focus should be on school improvement as it is essential for preparing individuals for the future.
Absolutely. And so just a follow-up question, say more about enforce certain actions. What was your discussion around that? What kinds of actions?
There was discussion about sometimes when you have data being presented to a school setting, you sometimes have to tell someone that we're going to do this in this direction. So sometimes you have to say, we're going to have to comply with this to get them towards that school improvement model. So sometimes you have to do that.
Gotcha. Thank
Well,
you. Okay, go ahead.
that's all I said. I just said you're welcome.
Okay, all right. Group number one was Netta, Joel, Kristen, and Portia. How did you answer our questions?
Well, again, we mentioned that there's the two approaches: putting out fires, kind of the reactive approach, which is compliance, and the preferred model of commitment, which is like prevention. The textbook mentioned that firefighting metaphor. So, compliance focuses on the minimum or looking at gaps, which isn't a bad thing, but it's incomplete. And the whole model of compliance is kind of doing the minimum or being content with the status quo. And we have to go beyond that. We have to get the whole school involved. It's not merely just a top-down administrative effort. The faculty, the staff, everyone has to take part in this process. A lot of collaboration and to help, improve the culture and looking at data to improve the school.
Absolutely. So when you talked about Joel, whole school has to be involved. Can you elaborate on that? Who would that include?
Well, I mean, we've got, of course, the administration, but as far as the faculty goes, I mean, I teach in a K through 12 school, but if we really want to change the culture and have everybody buy in to this to data analysis and using it, everybody has to take part in that and has to take ownership in it. So we're talking about every faculty member. We're meeting in departments, we're meeting vertically, and so forth. And so it takes a commitment from everyone, all the stakeholders, to do this.
Awesome. Good. Yes, absolutely. Okay, group number two, breakout session number two was Hannah, Haven, and Gregory. Oh, and Mary. Is it Mary or Mary Haley?
I want Mary Haley or Haley. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I don't
All
like to
right.
be called Mary.
Okay, Mary Haley. Or Haley. Just Haley? All right, go ahead, group number two. How did you answer our question?
So kind of what we discussed was that compliance was a requirement, like the bare minimum to get by while being committed for continuous school improvement is a commitment that continues on after analyzing data points and wanting to continuously improve our teaching and learning, because that's the core of what we do as educators, is teaching and learning. Sorry. So we want to also, we talked about creating and improving the organization to ensure learning for every student, not just certain students, not just those low kids trying to fill the gaps, but every kid, to make sure they achieve and get where they need to be. And then to build structures for all staff to collaborate and learn together under a shared vision for the school. So.
Awesome. So y'all picked up some language from the text there, probably. When you said create structures, did y'all talk about what kinds of structures you might be thinking about?
Honestly, that was at the very last bit of our discussion, so we didn't get too deep into it.
Okay. Well, we're going to get deep into it, Haven, and the rest of the team. So we'll talk more about those structures. Okay. Group number 3 was Alexandria, Quo, Cassidy, and
Hi, Dr. Tharp.
hey, Quo.
I'll be the reporter for this group. We looked at the chart and it very clearly, we discussed all this wording is from the group. It clearly gravitates toward the second option, which is using the data for continuous school improvement. We had opposite perspectives, which I'm glad that Dr. Cockrell said, you know, they're going to be different perspectives. So Julia says that she was told at her school to teach on bubble kids, pushing the 3s to 4s. But Alexandria, myself, and we were taught to focus on the bottom 25% to feel like they're accounted for more because there's more bottom 25. We then talked about the focus. The question was, do administrators focus on different strengths? We were talking about that, but then Julia said that she moved her 3s to 4s. And I know Alexandra and I discussed how we have so many, low, that we were confused as to what's the national reason for who to move. Nikki also said that her school focuses on short-term success rather than long-term. Mm-hmm. And okay. For me, I teach art, so all this data stuff is like Chinese, which I only speak English. So reading on page 3, we were reading and it states that too many schools focus on the gaps. And the compliance and can neither innovate nor create a future that looks different from the status quo. And I was wondering why our school always looks the same, no matter what the kids are, it's always the same. So it says such an approach inhibits systematic improvement and limits progress towards excellence and real equity. So we had a few more comments. We asked the question, does it depend on administration? The last comments were talking about waiting on the scores from the state. I know in Memphis they hit today. Nikki's school gives theirs at the beginning of the year, which our school will give them at the beginning of the year. I just worked with the PLC coach today at summer camp, and she showed them to me. And I think Alexandria is still waiting on hers as well. So that was our conversation.
Okay. All right. So did you guys settle on with that conversation? Which one did you decide was most important, Quo?
I did everything but answer. We thought that school improvement was more important.
Commitment for school improvement.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
All
right. And you said a lot of things in.
Excuse me, Dr.
Go ahead.
Tharp. I'm gonna pronounce it wrong because I mispronounce people's name. Is it Coy?
It's Quo, like status quo.
Okay, cool. I like that. What I'm going to say to you, and I say it to another class of students that I teach that are not in a subject area content based school tested subject area, all the ways that we say that. Please align yourself. If your walk is to be in administration, then you need to align yourself with content area stuff. Like if there is a data talk going on in your building in a PLC, you need to invite yourself. Because no longer are, no longer is the role of an administrator, whether it's an AP, whether it's a principal, is to just do management. If you can't speak data, read data, know data, then your chances of moving into an administrative position is going to be slim. And that's even when you talk about a music director's position. They talk data, and I'm sure you know that with art and all the things. So just being mindful of that as you move through this program.
Yes, and I pressed a little bit on the group that mentioned all staff, which is one place I was trying to go. People sitting in those data meetings mean that all staff means all staff. Teacher assistants, your PE coach, your senior communications teacher, all staff means all staff. Because if we don't do that, one, it creates a culture of isolation, and every one of those teachers teaching in a tested position feels like they're in it by themselves. And we know that's not the way that we should see accountability and improvement for all students. And then the other thing,
being an art teacher, you touch every kid if you're in an elementary school. Even a kid that lacks motivation, because I meet with my specials teacher and we talk data. I've heard from the teachers, these kids are unmotivated. Who has a good connection? Building relationships and that sort of thing to just make sure all kids are being touched, bubble to bottom 25 to high performing. You want to touch all kids.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear from group number, I think we're on group number 4. That was Bethany, Stephanie, and Tina.
So we talked about how compliance for accountability is kind of that knee-jerk reaction. You look at the data and you're like, okay, I see a gap, let's fix it. Where your continuous school improvement is that collaboration through your school, and that's all staff, your administrators, towards that common vision of growth. And how are you going to get there? We decided that the continuous school improvement plan is a better route to go to see growth. And some of us talked about how they know that their school is working just with that compliance. Let's fill the gaps. And in other schools, they're on that continuous school improvement. But we decided that was a better plan.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Group number 5 was Chelsea, Mackenzie, Coy, and Kristen, excuse me.
Okay, so I tried to just kind of summarize our conversation into a statement where I wouldn't be too chatty. And so we just this summarizes what we said. If it doesn't agree, y'all just tell me that's wrong. Pressures of accountability force the focus to be on data, on reactive to data, even when intentions are good and we know better. That only focuses on bubble kids' gaps and does not include all students nor staff. But if we shift from compliance to commitment, a side impact would be the accountability model would automatically improve. One reason I think that we become more reactive is to shift to the commitment side is not an automatic, easy thing to do. It would be a lot of time and work to create those things. And I think sometimes the pressures of the accountability system, even though we know as leaders, we kind of tend to go back to that left side when we need to be on the right side.
Absolutely. Well said, Chelsea. And that's a great segue to part 2 of this breakout discussion. So in this segment, we want you to go back into the same groups you were in before. So remember who your teammates were, and I'll just go through it quickly. Out front were Jessica, Lucy, Lyndon, Whitney, and Christina. Group 1 then was Netta, Joel, Kristen, and Portia. Group 2 was Hannah, Haven, Gregory, and Haley. Group 3 was Alexandria, Chloe, Nikki, and Julie. And then group 4, Bethany, Stephanie, and Tina. Group 5, Chelsea, Mackenzie, Coy, and Kristen. All right, so go back into those breakout groups, and on the instructions, you'll see that what we want you to talk about now extends from that previous conversation. In your school, or in a school that leans more toward compliance, what has to be in place to begin that shift to commitment? What systems, processes, and procedures do you think need to be in place to be able to shift your school from compliance to commitment? And what are some practical steps to make that shift? So we all agreed commitment is the most important, but the pressure of accountability does sometimes bog us down in that compliance piece. But if we're ever going to hope to move to the next level, we've got to make sure we're addressing the needs of all learners, not just those who gain the most points in accountability. So we've got to develop the systems, processes, and procedures to make that happen. So talk about that in your conversations, and then when you come out, talk about what you learned about each other's school settings as you thought about that conversation. So the goal is here to begin to put your heads together, learn from each other about possible next steps you can make to begin to make that shift. So I'm going to go ahead and start breakout sessions, and you'll go back into your same groups.
Who would like to report this time?
We can keep the same roles. I think we
I
should.
think you did a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I wanted to go ahead and get started before it left my brain. The first thing I thought about with the question that Dr. Tharp just said was, I'm thinking clearly define the why. When you bring everyone together, they first need to understand and connect to the purpose of the work and what the questions are of why they got there. How do we need to move forward, and what needs to be in place in order to move forward.
All right, so
Agreed.
you define
I
why
agree.
goals. Okay, that's good. I think you also need to build trust. You need to
Well,
have.
not the,
Yeah,
I'm,
you
I'm
need to
so
have a
sorry to
trusting environment.
interrupt.
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
no, you said clearly define the goals, and that's great, but I think there's a difference between the why and the goals. And what I was saying was, why are we here? Because when we're talking about the analysis of data, I need to understand where we are in order to move forward to the goals. So clearly defining the why behind.
I think that can be broken down onto so many levels too. One of the things that I taught second grade last year, and I'm moving to third grade this year. But one of the things that I did and will continue to do is really defining that why, even on the student level. I was a very big proponent of every time we took a test, making sure that my students understood what we were doing, why we were doing it, what we were trying to accomplish, what standards we were trying to work on. And I feel like we showed a lot of positive growth in our class because the students really understood the why behind where we were trying to get to. And then being able to take that data and show the growth, and I think really even to a student level, was because they understood the why behind it. They understood where they were trying to get. They understood what standards they were trying to master and why they had to know that standard in order to grow. So I think even from a school-wide level, being able to unpack those standards and understand why we have to get to where we're getting, and like sort of like backwards planning, like this is where we're getting to, and these are the steps that we have to take in order to get to that end result.
I agree with I agree with you, Christina, and Whitney, because I just feel like It's the focus, it's the purpose, and the outcome. The why are we doing this? How do we get there? And this is the result that I'm willing to look for. I also feel like in order to get there, we need to know and have a good data infrastructure. Um I feel like we need to have some support from administration, and we don't just need any old PLCs or professional development. We need targeted ones to the needs of the staff and the student. Those are my top three.
Do y'all have curriculum instructors at y'all school that like help you unpack all that? Like when you don't have like the school I'm going to does have that for math and ELA, but the school I was coming from did not have it. And so it was sort of you're left up to your own accord to figure out that stuff. And so I found myself having to sort of go to county a lot and ask those questions of like, okay, here's my data. Now, what does it mean and what do I do with it?
At the school that I just left, I did seventh grade U.S. history and that. Then last year I did sixth grade ELA, and we have a general district curriculum instruction and assessment director, and we had consultants to come in and for ELA and math. And the one thing that we did do that at first it was frustrating, but then I finally understood like the significance of it is we had like every 9 weeks, we would have data presentations, and our consultant would come in and, we'll go over the data like in class. And then we would put our presentations together to go present to the principal, the CIA director for the district, and the superintendent, and to see focusing really on our bottom 25 and our bubble kids, moving our threes to the fours. So at first we were left to our own accord, and then I guess the district started to like really listen from the other, me personally dropping some little the little birdies teachers into the other teachers and staff's ears to like say something to the principal, like go ask your questions, or if you don't understand, do this. So they ended up bringing in the consultants. But at first we were left to our own capacity on those things until somebody had to speak up, and then they actually realized that it was a need.
Jessica, something that you just said, as far as the students and making sure that their needs were addressed, I also think we can add, I wrote down, um, let's see, I was taking the notes, I wrote it down. Focus on student-centered learning. I think that's a part of it also. Once you assess the data and you understand the why, you see where your kids are, making sure that you apply all of the changes that you need to make. Let the data drive the instruction, and make the changes that need to be made for improvement.
Yep, exactly, Whitney. You have to have that flexibility and be able to adapt and adjust.
And Christina, you asked what did we have in our districts, and that made me think about providing supports and resources that support the needs also. So some districts we have lead teachers, some districts we have curriculum specialists, some we have all of it. And that's a part of it also. So once the data shows and reads the story to you of where we are, um, and we change practices, focusing on student learning, I think all of that plays a part in school improvement.
Yep, especially adding in goal setting and like monitoring with feedback. I feel like me personally, I'm a feedback person. I need all the feedback that I can get, and I need specific targeted feedback, not just broad vague like you're doing good. No, I need to know like in what areas are my strengths and what areas can I improve, even if you don't feel like Is anything technically wrong with it? What areas or what suggestions do you have to make this better for me? So I feel like feedback is important as well.
You're right on track, Jessica. Thank you for bringing us into our whole group debrief. And I think if it's okay with you, Dr. Cockrell, I'm gonna change the question.
Okay.
But I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. We have a few minutes left, or quite a few minutes left in this segment. So I heard a lot of things that were very interesting in the breakout rooms. And I'd like to keep that conversation going, but from a little bit of a different lens. So, and Dr. Cockrell, I'm going to mention a few things that I heard where the conversation was really on the right track, and I'd like for you to follow my lead, and then I'm going to challenge them with a question. Okay. All right. So some of the things that I heard that were really on track were you talked about common visions in your breakout room. So let me back up for a minute. What systems, processes, and procedures do you need to shift your school or your team that you work with from compliance to commitment, and what are some practical steps? So these are some of the terms that I heard that were on the right track. Common vision is important. Collaboration is important. Support resources are important. Did you hear things mentioned in your breakout rooms, terms like that, Dr. Cockrell, that indicated they're thinking on the right track?
Yes, ma'am. And then some of the conversations even dove into how the schools are implementing some of those things with the vision and in PLCs, bringing it back to the vision. And I think, I can't remember which number, but I love the conversation around being in meetings where teachers were uncomfortable because we went back to the vision. We went back to this is the way we do things at our school. Um, and teachers having to either be compliant and get on board, or they ultimately had to find someone somewhere else to work.
Okay. All right. Okay. So with that, I want to take you back to a particular part of our question. What systems and processes and procedures do you need in place to shift? So you guys are absolutely hitting on the behaviors that need to be happening in buildings: collaboration, a shared vision, PLCs happening, the resources, the support. How do you get it there? So that's the key in a leadership role. Each one of you are going to be, you're currently in a leadership role in your classroom, and many of you may be doing even beyond that. But as a teacher leader or an assistant principal or a principal, your trick is to move your school from where you currently are to where you want to be. So what systems, processes, and procedures do you need in place to make that happen? There is, the answer to that question is in your text. So when you go back into your groups, same groups, what I want you to think about is look at a few resources in your text. On page 14, you see an outline of the continuous school improvement framework, and these are terms we want you to really begin to remember and use in your conversation. Continuous school improvement framework. And then on page 19, you see the continuous school improvement cycle. And then on page 23, you see a continuum. So a place to locate your school on the continuum, and then what would take you to the next level. So if you're starting at a 1 on your approach, your implementation, or your outcomes, the level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5 give you an idea of next steps to take to move you through that continuum. So what we'd like for you to do is look at those 3 illustrations, resources, tools, and start to think in terms of, if I'm going to move my school or my team, what systems, processes, and procedures do I need to put in place as a leader to begin to shift to more collaboration, begin to shift to thinking about all students and all teachers? How do I make the shift begin to happen? Okay. All right, let's go back to breakout rooms and have that conversation. You're muted, Christina. I see you talking. I can't hear you.
I was talking. Does anybody else want to go first, or?
I think I know what she's hitting
If
at.
I left.
The first thing whenever a new administrator comes in is always like a vision or mission statement. They're talking about, and that the book mentions also that, aligning visions. So I think that would be one thing. Whenever you're making those process changes, you need to have everyone on the same mission statement. And I see that a lot whenever administrations change. That's just my thoughts.
So on page 18 in the book, it talks about how we're going to get to where we're going to get, or where we want to be, and then what are we doing to make a difference. And so I thought that those points aligned with what specifically you can do to drive that change. And it talks about the PLCs and using those PLCs to get the knowledge that you actually need. I guess Jessica talked earlier about having those dedicated dedicated meetings to really understand and be educated on the different parts of the data that can be overwhelming at times. And we talked earlier about when you have all that data and you have to have a plan and what are you going to do with it, and being able to take so much information and break it down into pieces, I think is important. I think you have to be able to understand what it is that you're looking at to be able to break it up into tangible action items. I'm talking with my hands.
Yep, I definitely agree, Christina. Setting that vision with the SMART goals, the continuous monitoring and evaluating those, and celebrating the small wins as well. You have to. Everybody likes a little celebration to know, hey, we're doing something. We've improved. Now this will help. That'll motivate us to want to continue to achieve our SMART goals and continue to grow.
I kind of think it reminds me a little bit too of going back to that Brene Brown about having the hard conversations, and being able to really talk about those conversations of like, we have this data and we have these plans, like, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing to meet those goals? And that kind of falls again under being accountable. Some of the things that we just have to do. I mean, we have to be able to meet these metrics in order to get our students to where they need to be. And if you're not doing them, somebody needs to be the one that's having the hard conversations of saying, hey, look, this is what needs to change.
I agree with you all. I thought about, well, as you were just talking, Christina, when we were in whole group, and Dr. Cockrell mentioned to the other student that even if you're not in a tested subject area, still understanding the data and what's going on in the school. And I brought that up because one content area can't do it on their own. When you talk about improving students, whether it's in literacy, reading, math, science, what have you, what can other subject areas do to support and help with that? And in order for that to happen, everyone needs to be in the room, have that same school mission and vision, and just understand, once again, the why, and see the data like, oh, cross curriculum, anything, writing, whatever we all can do. Because as we know, when you talk about a school report card, it doesn't just say Miss McDavis's class, it's that entire school. So yeah, aligning the vision.
Another thing that I thought about while she was talking was on page 24, it talks about kind of how it's like the scientific method, like whenever you identify those changes that you want to make, like that you have to take note that you're not going to see the outcome or the results you're looking for unless it's being implemented by everyone in the appropriate way. So that just kind of relates to what you were talking about, Whitney, with the consistency across the vision. If someone doesn't agree with the vision and then they are not implementing it, and then we say, okay, well, if everybody's doing this, why are we not seeing any changes? And then you have people over here who are not on the same page. So that's something I found was really prioritized in that second chapter, was talking about the um, collaboration part of it. Because if we're not all on the same page, then the same changes are not being implemented, and then you're not going to see the outcome that we're looking for.
That's right, Lucy. Teamwork makes the dream work. That's what I always say.
Have any of y'all been in the school system where you had to change, you saw the change from we need to fix this? And did they try any of these methods?
Absolutely.
I've seen a lot of PLCs get thrown in. They also talk about transparent communication, like you said, discussing the honest conversations, and that usually works out well.
Me, I also feel like that you in it, that depends on your principal, the admin as well, because you can have some admin that because they like to avoid confrontation, they will not have those hard conversations, and then it'll be all delegated to somebody else or completely brushed under the rug. And then when it comes to the data, they don't know you, or they don't know how to fix it because it has been so long down the line and they just let it keep rolling. So I also feel like you have to have a leader that doesn't mind having those hard conversations as well.
So a long-term leader that creates like a collaborative leadership structure where they all work together.
Yes.
That takes years to do, but that's a good,
Yes.
yes.
That's a part of school culture. I think I remember in one of my earlier classes, and I think Dr. Tharp may have taught it. It was a saying: when the principal sneezes, the entire school gets sick. And it's kind of what the principal cares for. You see it. What they're
Yeah, trickle
excited
down.
about, you see it. Where their vision is, you see it. What they don't have an emphasis on and they don't have a lot of understanding of, you don't see it.
Right.
So if you mentioned PLCs, Lyndon, if you're in a school where leadership where they don't see the importance of PLCs, you're not going to see true PLCs.
It seems like it's real fragile. You could bring in one new principal who
Uh-huh.
just changes
Everything will go
entire
away.
system.
Yeah, because if that's not their vision and their focus, you will see it.
That's what's amazing about it. It's just
It is.
so fragile. Oh. All right, I got PLCs are vital, maintaining transparent communication when discussing data and the decisions that need to be made, engaging in constructive, honest conversations when goals are not met. And we're going back to the group.
Okay, really, really good conversation. And I took some notes in the note taking guide. I want to share my screen, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Cockrell to weigh in here. But a couple of things I wanted to point out. In your leadership language, we'd like for you to start thinking in terms of systems, processes, and procedures. So when you guys were talking about this in your previous breakout, you talked about common visions, collaboration, support, resources. Those things are not going to happen unless you put in systems, processes, and procedures to create the conditions for these things to happen. So some of the things that I heard you talk about that are leaning more toward thinking system, process, and procedures. I heard one group talking about PLC systems, so professional learning community systems, and processes and procedures during those PLCs. So when I hear that, I think about your PLC system being your opportunity for adults to collaborate and learn together. I also think about PLCs as more than just the formal set aside PLC time. It's every time a group of teachers get together to work together. It could be your team meetings, it could be your grade level planning time, it could be two teachers who teach across the hall from each other working together informally. But start thinking about any time your staff work together, all staff, teacher assistants, special education, PE teachers, whoever is going to be working together. Those are really technically professional learning times. So start thinking in terms of every time we have more than one team member together, that's an opportunity to learn and to collaborate. So you've got systems for that, right? You've got schedules that create official PLCs. You've got schedules where we see that different teachers are off, have their planning time at the same time. Whether those are content area teachers off at the same time, grade levels off at the same time, or a mixture of teachers off at the same time. I worked with a principal recently who said, I don't know when I'm going to do my PLCs. And I said, well, does everybody have planning? And he said, yes. And he said, but the problem is I don't have all my English teachers off at one time and all my history teachers off at one time. And I said, well, who is off at one time? And he started telling me, and I said, then that's your PLC. There are general, effective ways of teaching and practicing that can apply no matter what the content area. So there are lots of things that they can learn together during that time. So start thinking in that time, in that frame. I heard another group talk about setting your vision, SMART goals, continuous monitoring, and celebrating. What I thought about when you talked about that was the figure on page 19, which is that plan, do, study, act cycle. It's your continuous school improvement cycle. But what it means is that is the continuous school improvement cycle is a system. Then there are processes for each piece of the cycle, and there are procedures for each piece of the cycle. And embedded in that are where we do set a vision. We keep coming back to it. We set our goals from that vision. We continuously monitor those goals, and we celebrate the wins. So system, process, procedure. It happens regularly. So you've got to schedule that, put it in place as a leader. Another group talked about, well, we've also got to be willing, you mentioned Brene Brown and what you learned from in your leadership course where we introduced you to some of her podcasts and ways of thinking. Somebody has to be willing to have the hard conversation. That is, frankly, you as a leader. So it's one of those, the more you know kinds of things. You know it now. Someone has to have the hard conversations. So skill yourself up to have those hard conversations. Whether you're in an official position or not, you are a leader.
Can I interrupt right there, Dr. Tharp?
Please, yes.
And I love the way you proceeded with the Brene Brown of it, because you guys are the man in the arena. And I refer to that comment a lot when I speak to my teachers. You are the man in the arena. And if you are an 8th grade science teacher and it's 3 in your department and your scores are constantly improving, it is not I'm going to close my door and hold that information, because then we're not improving the school. And I tell my teachers, we live and die as a team, and that's 3rd through 5th grade, a team. So anything that improves the system builds that continuous school improvement. And as a leader in that setting, you lead from where you are and you say, okay, let's share what we're doing in our classrooms. What are we doing that is propelling students forward? So that begins the process of continuous improvement where you are.
Absolutely. And those hard conversations have to be had. If we keep doing the same thing we've been doing, we're going to keep getting the same results. So you've got to impact that cycle of whatever you've gotten previously. You've got to interrupt that cycle, and that calls for a conversation of being truthful and honest about where we are and what's working and what's not working. And I find it easier to step in with the what's working. Then let's continue that. What are we doing where we're really seeing powerful results with our students? And let's continue doing that. And then let's think about that to figure out, well, what's not working and what can we learn from what's working to shift the what's not working. Along with that, Coy, you said something in your group that I wanted you to share with the whole class, if you don't mind. And I think you were talking about the framework on page 14. If you were talking about something else, let me know. But you made a comment that it should be posted, that it's a conversation starter. Will you share your thoughts with the group?
It was on page 14, the continuous school improvement framework. When I was annotating throughout doing the assignment, this really stuck out to me because, like, I think, like, this should be posted in, like, the data meeting rooms or, like, the teacher break room, because, like, you just look at that and so many things come to mind. Like, all of the little bullet points on the side that there's like 5 questions within each, like where are we now has 5 questions, 4 questions in it, and then it has like 20 bullet points within it. And that's just like, you look at one of those bullet points and you have a 30-minute meaningful conversation with somebody that could promote a positive change in the school culture. So I just thought it should be posted in schools for teachers and staff to see.
Yes, love that you had that idea. And the one thing that I want to add to it is a couple of things. One, the whole text breaks apart a piece or a chunk of this framework. So there are chapters on who we are now and really understanding who we are. You're going to get into that. There's a chapter on how did we get where we are. So you've got to understand your root cause, and what we can't do is blame it on parents and kids, because we have who we have and parents are sending us the best kids they got. They're not keeping the good ones at home. So if you hear conversation in your building about these parents or these kids, those are placing the blame game. Don't allow that to go on, because what we do have control over is the moment a child steps into our building to the moment we put them on the bus. You have control over what's between that time. So don't allow that blaming to continue. But you've got to understand how we got to where we are. There are chapters on where do we want to be. Chapters 9 and 10 are going to walk you through how do we figure out where do we want to be. And then chapter 11, how are we going to get to where we want to be? Got to make a plan. And then is what we're doing making a difference. So the whole book is going to take these chunks and break them apart. What that framework outlines is a system. It's a system for continuous improvement. And then embedded in that system are processes and procedures that you're going to read about as we walk through the text. So this is your how-to, guys. And it was good to hear you, Coy, talk about the impact that just looking at that framework had on you. And yes, it would be amazing to have it blown up and posted in your data room or your PLC room or frankly everywhere. I mean, kids need to see that, right? Which takes me to the second comment that I thought was incredibly powerful. Bethany, you talked about data belonging to the students and what you do with that. Will you share your thoughts with the group?
I said that I had an instructional coach that taught me how to teach the students on how to look at data, not just as if they're proficient or advanced or, below, but she wanted us to look at every assessment, and we use Mastery Connect. So we get real life data through it. So when they take an assessment, she wanted me to release their data to them. And so, and I had a little button I could push and do that. But she wanted the kids to sit and look at their green, which green means they were good. And so, but she wanted them to say, "Did I get that right again? Why did I get it right? Do I fully understand it? Or did I just guess?" And then their yellows, which meant they weren't scoring great, but they were, they still had progress to make there. That was their like, why am I missing it? Do I know how to do it, or did I make a computation mistake? Did I put in the calculator wrong? And then they're red. And most of the time they're red, they would just say, I don't know what to do. And most of the time that had to deal with systems of equations. And so, but she really wanted the students, but it took the students. And what she explained to me was I had to change the culture in my classroom because the kids had to learn to be open and honest with themselves and the people in their groups. And I had to learn to be open and honest with my teaching. There was no faking it till you made it, type situation. And so we had to learn to be open, honest, and we did, and it works. It works with my students, and I see great growth with them. So.
That's awesome. You remind me of a time that I was in a fourth grade, and it was an ELA classroom, and the teacher had been working on the kids creating their data trackers and setting goals and then figuring out what they had to do to attain their goal. So I looked over the shoulder of one of the little girls, and I was just looking to see if I could find the video quickly, and of course I can't, but I looked over her shoulder and I asked her, I said, tell me about your goal tracker. And she said, well, here's my goal. I just talked to my teacher about whatever classroom test they just had. And I set myself this goal, and I asked her why, and she answered me. And I said, well, what are you going to do to reach your goal? And she flipped to her one of the answers she had given. I think it was they were writing something, an essay maybe, and it had been graded by a rubric. And she said, well, I'm going to need to figure out how to do better transitions among my sentences in order to get, to reach a higher score on my rubric. And I said, well, how are you going to do that? And she, and she kept answering. I just kept probing, and she kept answering. But that, I recorded it. I asked her if I could record her. I recorded it because that's what we ought to be working for. Kids setting their own goals. We know that's a powerful strategy. Hattie's research tells us that a strong effect size when kids set their own goals and then figure out how they're going to attain their goals with our support. So,
well, and I explained to them, I said when administration comes in or my coach comes in and other teachers were always coming in looking, if they ask you questions and you can't explain your goals or how you're going to reach them, that's embarrassing to me because that means I haven't helped you get there. So we got to figure this out, You're awesome. You understanding your goal is just as important as you reaching your goal.
So did you believe, Bethany, that it would make that much of an impact when your instructional coach was sharing that with you?
No.
When did you believe it?
When I saw the results, then when I got my scores back the next year. Well, actually, when we did our final summative assessment before the state test, and I was like, holy guacamole, we have never seen numbers like that. So.
Well, guys, the reason that I asked the question is because a principle of learning, adult learning, and really everyone. Again, you're going to be in a leadership role. Your job now is to help your class learn. Your class now becomes the teachers that are under your care, whether it's 22 or 750. So a principle of adult learning is behavior precedes belief. I'll attribute it to Doug Reeves, who probably can attribute it to someone before him, but behavior precedes belief. Sometimes you have to ask your team of teachers to do something, try it out, and then talk about what happened as a result of what you did in order to begin to shift that belief and behavior. Sometimes we're stuck where we are because we haven't tried something new and we haven't seen how kids respond to that something new. Okay, great conversation. I want to leave you with thinking of these resources, the continuous school improvement framework, the process, and the continuum as systems, processes, and procedures that you need to put in place to move to the next level. And Dr. Cockrell is going to take us into our next segment.
Okay, so this is my first time using WebEx, so I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully it works. Okay. It is trying. Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet, Dr. Cockrell, but when you clicked share,
Yes.
you should have had a window that opened up and you can choose the content that you want to share. Did that happen for you? There you go. It's coming.
Okay.
Well, that's me. Choose
want,
a different.
yes, we don't want to share just your screen. Okay, let's see, share content.
Okay. And then choose the window.
Okay, am I sharing the window? Because now it's not.
Let's see. Do you have something in particular or is it something?
Yes, it's a PowerPoint,
Okay.
but I'm not seeing it pop up.
Okay. All right. Have you, let's see, have you opened the PowerPoint on your computer?
From where I am, it's appearing like I'm sharing it, but it's not. Okay, wait, now I got a box. Share system preferences is where I am. Okay, it is on or share. It's a MacBook. It does what it wants to do when it wants to do it.
Well, have you opened your PowerPoint?
Yes, I did
Okay.
all of that.
All right. So when you click on share, there should be a option there for sharing Microsoft PowerPoint.
It's asking me to shut my browser down and start over.
Oh, don't do that. You want to email it to me and you talk, and then I'll get you going.
Yes, please let me do
Okay,
that.
well, let's try that.
Because it is refusing to open. And I think it's going to have to reload in order for me to share it. All right, technical difficulties. Just a second. Let me send it to you. It's coming from my work email because I do have it open.
All right, while you're doing that, I'm going to have them skip down. We won't do this right now, but I just want you to be thinking ahead while Dr. Cockrell is.
Yeah, I was going to say they can go in and go ahead and look, especially if they've not looked at the case study yet. Just
Okay.
look at that case study because that's where we're going to go next.
Okay. All right, open your Canvas shell and go to the assignment for case study that's going to be due on Sunday, and get that open, and you can open up the case study and just start reviewing that to give us a minute to get ready to go.
Okay, you should be getting it. I just sent it.
Okay.
Okay, did you get it?
I did, but it's making me do something different. So hold on one second. All right, for some reason, Dr. Cockrell, it's not letting me. Is it a link that you sent? Or
Okay.
because it's not an attachment.
Oh, why isn't it an attachment? Okay, let me pull it for you. It is in, I guess I shared it through OneDrive, and that's
Oh,
how it
okay.
came across as a OneDrive.
All right, let me try my full account from OneDrive.
Okay, I just sent it to you as just an attached document.
Okay.
Doesn't have a subject. It may be a little upset because I didn't put a subject line in, but maybe that will open.
Okay. It's a long way from Madison to Salis.
To where?
Salis. Right outside of Kosciuszko. It's taking a minute.
Yes. You know, when you need technology to work, that's when it doesn't. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yep. I heard something. There we go. I'm getting there. All right.
Can you put
Can you
it
see?
in slideshow view?
I can.
Okay, yeah. You can click to the next one. I had to make up 8 minutes because I got us off by 8 minutes, 9 at this point. So we kind of started talking about, and Dr. Tharp went into chapters 9, 10, and 11. So when you look at your assignment coming up for your case study, there is a case study listed on there, and you have some sample data. There's a scenario with sample data and all the things. Well, the first part of that assignment is basically you looking at the scenario listed in your Canvas module, and you're just dissecting the demographics piece, who we are. And that's going to come from what you've read when you read about Priceville Middle School. And it has lots there. If you've never dealt with data or looked at a community of people, this is going to be interesting for you because I've read through it and I got excited about it, and I don't do middle school. But when you look at your data, demographics, sometimes we try to narrow demographics down to just what color the kids are or how many teachers we have in a building. That's not your demographics. If you ever take your map data and look at the breakdown of all of the subgroups, you will realize when the state looks at your school, they don't just look at one entity. So when we start talking about who we are, how do we make up as a school, the district, the school, who are our students, who are our subgroups, what does our community look like, how are our students doing, what are our processes? And we've talked a lot about processes. What are the perceptions? And if you don't know the perception of your school, ask somebody in the grocery store. If you ask someone in the grocery store, they'll tell you how welcoming your building is. They will tell you how effective they think your teachers are. They will give you the lowdown of what your school is to the community. So knowing your culture, knowing your climate, knowing what the values are, and then what are the beliefs. Most time the values and beliefs come from the principal. What do they believe in kind of trickles down to the school environment, and it builds up who you are as a school. So what do we want to be? And we've had a lot of conversations around the CSI. We're trying to be a school of continuous improvement. So when we start thinking about where do we want to be, having conversations about what is our purpose, what is our mission. And I love the fact that y'all dove right into that. So you guys will know how to look at that from this case study from the lens of, do they have a purpose for their school? Do they have a mission? Do they have vision? Do they have a goal set? And our kids learning. So where do we want to go from here? And I will say to all of you as educators, when you go back in January, July, August, asking yourself, did you meet your goal? When you look at your data, when you look at your school data, where do we want to go as a grade level, as a department level, on a school level? And then, is what we are doing making a difference? And go back to what Dr. Tharp said. Sometimes we just need to do the effective things, and the other things that are cute that we love. Teacher pay teachers gave it to us. I'm not a big fan of teacher pay teachers. Y'all will hear that a lot. Some of those things we have to throw them out because they just are not effective. The kids we taught yesterday are not the kids we're teaching today, and the way they learn is totally different. And so looking at our practices up close, are these practices meeting the objectives we have in place for our school? Are we continuously improving by using these methods, these resources? And sometimes we buy curriculum. And Dr. Tharp, you know this, we'll buy a curriculum and we're so excited about it, and we get data back and we're like, oh, this was a terrible idea. And we just sucked $40,000 down in the drain. So just being very conscious of how do we get to where we are going. And sometimes that is making hard decisions about curriculum, about the instruction that we're providing. Is this a rigorous topic? Is this a topic we're spending 4 weeks on when we should be spending one? Because kids know this. But knowing who you are is so essential. So as you go through your case study, the first thing you are looking at is the who are we part. Okay, Dr. Tharp, if you'll click. So demographic data, it is the answer to the continuous school improvement question. Who are we? They establish the current context of the school, and it describes your trends. If it's a trend that everybody goes to the football game on Friday night, that is the culture of your school. You have to understand what your staff values, what your community value, in order to make continuous school improvement efforts. Because if you're doing something and the school community is like, no, we shouldn't be doing that, you're going to get pushback. Understanding what community you're in and the actual belief system. It will ensure that your staff, make sure that your staff is well informed about this structure and the system, and that leadership is all about instilling confidence in the decision making. People have to believe that you're making the best decisions. All right, Dr. Tharp. So who we are, how our demographics, how that breaks down. What's the number of students in your school? What's the number of students with special needs? What's the number of students who are English language learners? What's the age, the grade of students in each of your cohorts in your building? Your socioeconomic level of student population. You may have big gaps in socioeconomic status. So the way one person perceives something is going to be different than the other population of your people. All right, Dr. Clark. Your demographics, you look at your teacher and your student attendance. We spend a lot of time talking about kids being absent. Is the teacher absent? The teacher can't teach math if the teacher's not in the room, and I will assure you that the assistant teacher isn't teaching it the way the certified teacher is teaching it, nor the substitute. Now we do look at ethnicity, the races, the religious beliefs of the students and the teachers in the school. And if you're high school, you're constantly looking at your graduation and dropout rate. And you also spend time looking at the number of teachers by years of experience and teaching assignments. And just because they've been there for 20 years don't mean they're your best teacher. Okay. So when we start talking about analyzing our student data, there's 5 points that these steps are in your textbook. I can't remember the page. I should have written that down. But you're looking at step 1, just an independent review, right? Just a profile of each member of your staff. And you're looking at the strengths, the challenges, implications for the continuous school improvement plan and identifying other data that you need to identify. Step 2, small group review. Put people in small groups and have staff members share what they saw for strengths, challenges, implications. Then you move into large group. And again, people will vary in their ideas of what you see and what they see. But when you get in that large group, when you combine those small group results, you're trying to get a comprehensive set of strengths, challenges, implications so that your school improvement plan and the data is being utilized to the best of its ability. And then you go into step 4 and you're looking at commonalities. You're lining up the consolidated list from all those different groups so that your demographics, your perceptions, your student learning, and your school processes are all beginning to line up. So you ask, how do you get your school into a continuous cycle? You start with your demographic data and you start moving forward. You take the time in step 5 to look at the aggregations of commonalities, and then you aggregate or consider as a whole those highlighted commonalities. Okay, moving on. And again, I saw Dr. Tharp put in there that this is on page 36 in your book. And then we start looking at how do we do business. And I go back, perceptions of your school is what the community takes forth. You may see it a whole nother way, but the perception from a district level, how the district sees your school, how the community sees it, the students, the parents, as well as your teachers, all of that speaks to how you do business as a leader. So as you look and you dwindle down into those things, again, you're going to look at, where are we now? Where do we want to be? Is what we are doing making a difference? How do we get to where we are, and how are we going to get to where we want to be? That's the first conversation that I have as an administrator when we get back to school. This is where we are. This is where end of the year 24 MAP assessment data said we landed. These kids are now in this grade. Where are we going from here? And we decide on our goals. We decide on what it looks like for the school year that we're in. How are we going to do business this year? What is the perception we want the community to see and to understand? And it always goes back to, what is your culture? What is your climate? And what are the values and beliefs in your building? And you're going to always go back to student learning, looking at summatives, looking at formatives, and diagnosing everything, analyzing and breaking things down in a way that you can make it make sense. All right. And when we get down to the continuous improvement part, oh no, you can go. When we get to that, we start looking at, there's this questionnaire is in your book as well. Questionnaire process, we start determining the purpose, we determine the content, we develop an instrument and we pilot things, we take things off, we put things on. You collect data. That's a continuous cycle of collecting and analyzing results for your data and reporting. And how do you want to share these things? If I'm an F school, how do I want to present that? If I'm a D school, how do I want to present that? A schools and B schools don't have a big deal with presenting data because everybody's happy. They don't even want to know what the testing window looked like, how well did it go, because we think it went great because we're an A or a B. But they don't understand, if we're a D or an F or C, we worked hard and we are moving. So how do you present that to your community, to your school district, to your school board? Everyone wants to know about your results, and how is your plan for continuous improvement is implemented throughout the school year. Now, this is chapter 5 in your book. How are our students doing? And these are the 3 sections that you're going to be filling in for your assignment for July 12th. So, how are our students doing? And that's again, and I know I've said the same thing over and over, but if you are a school that is a continuous school improvement school, you're constantly feels like you're doing the same thing as on repeat, because you're always constantly looking at your demographics, and you're breaking those subgroups down to determine how are our students doing. Students are the bedrock of what we're doing every day. And if we have, I love the term bubble kid, we have a kid that's not moving, that kid's just as important as a special education student who has not moved, as an ELL student who has not moved. So looking at how our individual students are doing is always essential. Where are we now? Looking at our data. And then how do we get to where we want to be is part of those predictive, when you're spending time working and looking at how do we get kids to move? What standards are we missing the bar on? These are the essential PLC things that you should be spending time. And I go back to Dr. Tharp again on how she expressed always meeting with purpose. If I'm going to sit and meet with teachers, we love to chat about our kids and all of that, but we hurry into the meat of the discussion. What do you need? How are kids performing? What are the things that we need to implement within your content area in order to make sure kids are moving in the right direction? So, where do we want to be is always the start of the conversation, that vision, that mission. Where do we want to be? And where are we going? And how are we getting the steps to get to where we want to be? Continuous improvement plan. You have to have a plan. Now, the favorite question of the day is, how much time does it take to do this? A lot. I'm gonna sum these 2 bullet points up for you. It takes a lot of time because it's called continuous for a reason. It means it's a circle, it never ends. You're constantly looking at summative assessments, even your formatives, thumbs up, thumbs down. That is you taking time out to project where kids are moving. So when we start looking at who are we, looking at who our kids are, we're also identifying what their needs are. How do we do business? Are we letting our emotions guide our instruction, or are we letting data points guide our discussion? So we are always looking at different ways of improving our students. We may spend a couple of hours organizing the data for the data profile to ensure it is easy to understand and organize for the most general to the more specific data. I know one person on here said something about Mastery Connect. We use Mastery Connect. It's timely data. You get it right then. So you're able to act on it. And making sure you have multiple measures of student learning data, which means we take MVP, we also take NWEA, and we also have summative assessments that are all aligned across the grade bands. So these are all data points that we're constantly looking at, and we're always thinking about how we can improve. Any questions? I know I went really quick. And I will share the PowerPoint with y'all. I'll drop it in the module, but we are recording this session, and I will upload this recording also to our module, so you can go back and view it if you need to. Now, so we are moving into the session where you guys will go into your breakout. I ask that you look at the case study. If you haven't had a moment to read like through it, it's about 5 pages, so you may have not. Just kind of skim through it, just kind of look at all the things that are in the case study, but also go into the module and look at what the expectations are for this week's assignment. When you're in your breakout group, I always say I think best with others. Sometimes I have to bounce things off of other people. As you're in your breakout group, I want you to discuss what you've heard during this section. And I know I went really fast. But discuss any questions that you may have about the assignment, any misunderstandings that you need to clarify. And when we come back to the main group, what that time will be is for you to ask those questions that you could not get answered about the case study assignment. Does everybody understand the expectation? I see head nodding. Okay. So we are ready for our breakout.
Okay, and I do have Chelsea, Taylor, excuse me, Stephanie, and Whitney staying in the main room.
Okay.
Here we go.
No questions? Oh, y'all are reading. I got it. Shh, I'll be quiet.
Man, it seems pretty straightforward to me. I guess, am I just like regurgitating what this is saying in my own words? Is basically what I guess my question would be. Like based on the categories. Like if I can answer those questions from the text, if that makes
For
sense.
the case study, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I got it. I'm good.
PowerPoint okay?
Is a PowerPoint? Yes. You can display it however you'd like to. So you can you can submit your response in whatever format you choose. So yes.
We're basically reading the case study, answering the questions, but applying what the textbook is the book is chapters 1 through 5 are telling us about how we should answer those questions, correct? Basically.
Yeah.
Isn't that the progression?
Yeah, that's how I understood it.
It's a very, very pretty textbook if you don't have a hard copy. Mine just came in today and it's like pretty.
It is pretty. The paper's weird though.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's like different than normal textbooks that we've gotten.
It's hard to write on.
Oh yeah, it's almost like
I've
dry
noticed.
erase paper, isn't it? It's mirrors. Don't use a gel pen. Okay, so I need to read chapters 3 through 5 and then do the case study. I have read some of the case. I've read a lot of most of the case study a while ago while they were trying to get their computer to work. So. Are you ready to go back to school, Miss Williams? In like 4 days.
I'll go back in 4 days.
What is it? Today's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
It's Wednesday.
Wednesday, next Wednesday, a week from today. Our teachers come back to start the school district. We're on a
We don't go back till the 1st.
We're on a modified calendar. So we got out June 1st and they come back July 17th. It's a very, very short summer. I felt it this summer. Felt it big.
I did too. I know she was saying, look at the case study, and she also mentioned what were some things that we took away from her presentation just now. And I was taking notes of some things that kind of really stood out to me that she was saying. Comprehensive set of strengths and challenges. I just like hearing different ways of using terminology a little bit differently. You know, we're all saying the same thing, but sometimes
the way that it's presented and laid out just sounds so much better. So I I like that. Um, always meeting with a purpose. And I think that goes back to that compliance thing also. Um, sometimes I find that people are just checking boxes, and that's that compliance piece. But I want you to actually get something out of being in the room, a real purpose, because I feel like if you know and understand the purpose, you're more invested, which means the chances of you actually going and implementing some things and making changes are a little bit greater. Um, so yeah.
I think it's normal, like for adults, we need to know why. Like, why, how is this going to be beneficial of my time? Because we're all short on time. So meeting with a purpose, I like that too.
You know what's crazy, Chelsea? I was reading some stuff and there was something the other night and it said no one has to tell you to drink water and tell you the benefits of why water is good for you. So why in education do we have to do so much convincing of why we need to change our practices and be better for students to improve? It's like we have to do so much convincing to educated people of why we need to do different practices, but it's the same thing as convincing someone you need to drink more water.
Right.
Okay, hopefully you got a good glimpse of what's coming. Dr. Cockrell, did you hear a question we need to repeat for the group?
Yes, one of the questions was about how in depth to go with the responses to 1, 2, and 3 from the first assignment. And my recommendation for all of you is to answer the questions that are there and don't overthink it. Because the written part of this literally gives you what the demographics are, what the community looks like. It gives a really clear picture of Priceville. I want to call it Priceville Middle School. Did you have any questions, Dr. Tharp, in your session?
Yes, just one question, and it's who is the audience for your presentation. So while you can choose a format of your choice, I think this was our intent, Dr. Cockrell, correct me if I'm wrong. It's really to be able to apply the frame, it's for you. So it's to be able to really think through the framework and apply the process to an actual case study. So you're not presenting to an audience. I suppose your audience would be the two of us, just to be able to discern your depth of understanding of how you apply the process. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So the assignment is really meant to hopefully stretch your thinking about what we've thought about in terms of demographics in the past and what new things you might now think about, and then just apply the process.
That's it.
Okay. All right, so we have a couple of reflection questions, and that we'd like for you to at least begin answering as we end our session tonight. Take a look at the objectives for our time together, and those were to understand some foundational concepts of data for continuous school improvement. That should be just a number 1, not a number 1 and a number 2, so forgive that error. And then understand also the expectations for the case study assignment. So as you think about that, please respond to these 3 questions in response to the assignment tonight. So it's set up as a discussion, so you would just hit reply and answer these 3 questions. Why is it important to move from a school focused on compliance for accountability to a school committed to using data for continuous school improvement? Why is it important? Number 2, why is it essential to have a shared vision in which all your staff members commit? And then as a self-reflection, how comfortable are you with completing the case study assignment? And if you're not comfortable, please tell us why. Maybe you still have questions, you're not sure about how to get started, or maybe there's something else. So we can clarify instructions if we need to, offer support if we need to. So go ahead into your assignment tonight, click reply, and begin responding to that assessment. And the reason that we want you to do that now, I'll ask Dr. Cockrell to tie it back to lesson framing, if you will.
I'm sorry, say again, you want me to?
The reason that we're asking you to begin your reflection tonight while we're still on ties it back to
Your
purpose.
Right, the framing of the lesson. You always want to close out your lesson. It's just good for students to cement the learning, and that's where I live, is just making sure you go back in, you reflect on all the things that you just learned, and if you have any reservations or any questions, you can then present those via email or inbox in the Canvas module, so that way you guys have a full understanding of this class session, why we met, what we learned, and how we can apply it. And Dr. Tharp, I see your comment in the chat. We use the Fundamental 5, and now they have the revisited copy of it. And it is all about framing the lesson. And if you want learners to really walk away from your class knowing what you taught, you will frame the lesson. And when you frame a lesson, you start with the why, you end with the why. This is why we're doing what we're doing. And what you will find is when kids get to the dinner table and parents ask them what they learned today in math class, they can tell them. It is a very strong research-based strategy. I see a hand raise.
It was Quo. I have a quick question before I forget. For the reading for chapter 3 through 5, if we ordered the book, and I noticed there wasn't a Kindle version, but my book is taking forever. It says it's going to be like here on the 16th. So what do we do as far as doing that for Friday?
We can put a PDF up of that quote so that you'll have it to refer to.
Okay. It's scheduled for the 16th, but I ordered it like the 8th, or well, earlier than that.
Okay.
Well, Dr. Tharp sent me a book, and I just got it in the mail today.
Yeah.
And you sent it, what, 2 weeks ago? At least.
It's taking forever. I think, and this is funny, but I think FedEx and UPS are actually using the post office, because I mail stuff all the time. What's happening is it's going from UPS to USPS to the person, and it's adding days.
It is.
But thank you, Dr. Tharp. I'll wait on that.
All right.
I see people adding in their comments in the discussion. Very good ones too.
I smell my husband cooking dinner, so I'm really happy that we didn't get off early.
I'm not here smelling anything. That means my husband's still playing in the yard.
He's out creating something.
No.
No?
I have a question. We're supposed to be putting this on the document, right?
Just as a reply to the assignment.
Okay. I'm sorry. That threw me for a loop. I was like, wait, are we putting this on the agenda or in the reply? Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, if you scroll all the way down, it is a chat box down. Well, it's a discussion box at the bottom.
Dr. Cockrell, Dr. Tharp, I'm a little lost right now. As far as the reflection question, Dr. Tharp, I know you were saying it, but I don't think I was writing quick enough. Can you repeat for me what we're supposed to respond to?
If you in the chat, that note-taking document that Dr. Tharp put in the chat, that's the bottom portion of that is 3 questions.
Okay.
And I just posted them in So you
Okay,
can
thank
grab
you.
those and copy and paste them into your response and then answer each one. That may be a quick way to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that. Okay, guys, you're welcome to jump off it when you're done entering your response, or just jump off and then don't get up from your computer until you finish that, and then that'll be checked off your list. We enjoyed our time with you tonight. It was really good to hear your conversation and love getting to know you as leaders. Thank you so much for your participation and having your cameras on and really being present and focused.
Until next week.